Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Wojciech Werner-Wojnarowicz, and it is my distinct pleasure, at the kind invitation of Mr. Krzysztof Grzelczyk, Consul General of Poland in Toronto, to share with you some thoughts on the occasion of the 230th anniversary of the Polish Constitution of May 3rd, 1791. We are taking a great pride in the first written constitution of modern Europe and the second in the world after the American one. This is not, of course, an attempt at a scholarly presentation. Rather, it is a personal reflection of an educator from the perspective of political identity formation. After all, the questions of creating and expressing identities, collective and individual, are en vogue today. For 230 years now, on May 3rd, Poles living in Poland and abroad alike have been observing this day as a national holiday. One might be tempted to ask, why would, generation after generation, those critically engaged and those only marginally interested in the affairs of the past accept May 3rd Constitution as their own, to remember, honor, and celebrate? The phenomenon of this national holiday represents something uniquely Polish, going well beyond just preserving the memory of the past. I would suggest that it is a collective conscious choice, a decision, to propagate and celebrate a myth rather than actual history. Mind you, Polish history is full of paradoxes. A nation with a 1,000-year-long history just officially celebrated its centenary of independence. Poland's so-called historical borders have been repeatedly drawn and redrawn by the great powers, according to their interest, for the past 250 years. Its old capital, Warsaw, is a historical replica, literally rebuilt from ruins using historical paintings. Nothing in today's Poland is tangibly connected to its long-gone past. Nothing except its collective memory, a stubborn effort, illogical to the outsiders, to keep its soul alive in the face of extinction. I would suggest that it was this conscious effort of self-preservation, as a legitimate, sovereign national entity that is so powerfully demonstrated in the veneration of the Constitution of May 3rd, 1791. From the perspective of the North American experience, the Constitution Day suggests an event leading to a liberation from an oppression, foreign or domestic. The concepts of independence and constitution are regarded as mutually dependent. The Polish Constitution of 1791 does not lend itself to such a conjunction. It was not an attempt to establish liberty. It aimed at curtailing the unlimited liberty of its ruling class, whose ideology anchored its internal and external security in the absence of an effective state power. On May 3rd, 1791, in a climate of change brought about by the French Revolution, a minority of reform-minded citizens, conspiring to outmaneuver the conservative majority, voted in a program of profound reforms. Once implemented, it would have transformed Poland into a vibrant, modern state. It would have expanded the state protection of all its citizens, broadened their political rights, and rendered the state capable of effective military defense. Simple, not easy. The joy of announcing the Constitution, of ushering in a new era, was short-lived. The drive for reform, spearheaded by a well-wishing but weak minority, proved a monumental failure. Almost immediately, a powerful opposition arose, forming the Confederacy of Targowica, devoted to the restoration of the ancient liberties. Jealous of their unlimited privileges, no matter how ruinous to the state, the Confederates called on Russia for assistance. At the time when revolution raged in France, the Empress of Russia decided to restore l'Ancien Régime at a terrible price. The popular opposition to the reforms, seen as an encroachment upon the privileged position of the nobility and Catholic religion, was so strong that in the end King Stanislaus Augustus himself and the leaders of the reform movement not only abandoned their constitution, but joined the traitors. This royal capitulation had a paralyzing effect on the Polish spirit in the ensuing military confrontation with intervening Russia. There was no popular uprising in defense of the constitution. In the international context, May 3rd proved a catastrophe. Instead of strengthening Poland and rebuilding its military capacity, it provoked a fatal foreign intervention. The partition and liquidation of Poland as a sovereign state 4 years later was the final outcome of the ill-planned and ill-timed constitutional reform. The story of the 1791 constitution reads like a Greek tragedy. Fate offered no hope for a positive outcome. Russia had tolerated Poland's formal independence only as long as Russian interests had been safeguarded by a subservient elite and the general malaise of the state. Prussia's grand strategy of expansion always aimed at a complete overthrow, not support, of Poland, and yet the Polish patriots, when crafting the constitution, striving to emancipate Poland from the Russian domination, inexplicably pinned their hopes for support on their mortal enemy, whom they mistook for an ally. How had then the Constitution of May 3rd become the most celebrated event in Poland's history, equaled only by its restitution of independence in November 1918? The answer lies in the powerful idea, the drive for self-preservation, mastering the logical, legal thinking. The final partition of Poland was justified internationally by the alleged Polish inability to function as a modern civilized state. Consequently, to support the legal demands for the restitution of their statehood, the Poles pointed to the glorious Constitution of May 3rd as a shining example of Poland's ability to think and act as a political nation. Thus, the never-implemented constitution became the crown argument for the legitimacy of the Polish state and illegitimacy of the partitions. To willingly destroy a state which was evidently capable of self-reform and self-governance was, eo ipso, an international crime. The memory of what could have been can be a powerful weapon in the struggle for one's identity and one's future. This example of a creative spirit, of forward-looking political thought, of state thinking and state-building capacity demonstrated by the Polish elite was not lost on Poland's oppressors either. This is why, from the moment of partition at the end of the 18th century to the communist regime in the Soviet-dominated Poland after World War II, the very remembrance of the Constitution was suppressed and any attempt at public celebration on the 3rd of May severely punishable. To the Poles, the Constitution of May 3rd became the unassailable proof that Poland deserved independence. The fall was not inevitable. The decay was only temporary. The recovery of the once powerful ancient Commonwealth clearly laid out when it was arrested by a brutal foreign aggression. This conviction became the reservoir of our collective resolve. It allowed us to believe that Poland has not yet perished. Jeszcze Polska nie zginęła. This is why today we can repeat the old greeting, long live the 3rd of May. Niech się święci 3 maja. Thank you for your kind attention.